So I finally got around to seeing Beetlejuice this past Monday. I waited till after the weekend because I would have gotten a theater that was completely empty, which we did, which was amazing. But unfortunately, there was a family behind us. Their kid, that mother would not shut up. After we had moved our seats, we finally got to enjoy the movie, and when we did, it was a good movie. It was a good sequel. There was a lot of things that I really enjoyed about this movie. But before we get into all of that, I just want to get into the cons of the movie because I want to get all the bad stuff out of the way because I really want to talk about the good stuff. And for one, let's just get it out of the way. The whole story, I just felt like it was a little bit too all over the place with some of the subplots. I felt there was a little bit too much going on, and with that, I feel like a lot of these characters could have been utilized a lot better. Like for instance, Monica Bellucci's character, she was in the trailers and they were hyping her up to be this ex-wife of Beetlejuice coming back for her revenge, but in the movie she spends a lot of it just searching for him. For her story to just come to an end when it does, it just feels like it was just underwhelming. Her putting herself back together after Danny DeVito's character as the janitor, which by the way, I have a theory that this might be Frank from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because for one, he looks the same, he has the same crazy hair, and he drinks the chemical products, which Frank likes to do a lot of that kind of crazy shit. I don't know, I was just telling my wife about that and I just thought it was a funny coincidence or whatever. But after he electrocutes himself as he's pushing his little floor cleaner, he knocks over a bunch of these crates and then her body parts start falling out of these crates, which why would, I get you putting them in separate boxes, but also why did you put them all in the same room? Why didn't you just disperse them all over the world or whatever if you didn't want this person to come back? Because by the way, her character is a soul sucker. She is part of this cult who sucks souls. So anyway, I just feel like her putting herself back together, her stapling herself, had more screen time than her actual motive in the movie did. And my wife was just like, damn, I really wanted to see her because she was so gorgeous as this character, and for it to just come to really nothing in the end was kind of just, well damn, that sucked. But yeah, a lot of these other characters, it's the same thing. Like Jeremy, the boyfriend that Astrid essentially falls in love with, when she first meets him, she crashes through the fence, he's sitting up in his treehouse or whatever, come to find out that he's just been dead this entire time, and the treehouse is the furthest his ghost could go. So he really kind of tricked Astrid into thinking that he was, you know, alive and that he really liked her and stuff like that, but really in the end he was just tricking her to take her soul so that way he could go back to the real world, live out to be this murderer, because the house he's living in is called the murder house, and his story is just that he killed his parents, and in the beginning you see his parents but they don't really show their faces or anything like that, which I was kind of like, well that's weird. But then when you do see their faces, like his mom has, I think it's like a potato peeler or like an egg beater or something, jabbed through her eye, and then his dad also, I forgot what it was, it looked like a saw or something, but he essentially killed them. His story that he tells Astrid is that he used to steal his dad's beers, go up into the treehouse, and then one day he fell out of the treehouse, broke his neck, but really he was just trying to escape from the cops and he fell out of the treehouse and, you know, broke his neck. Once they are in the afterlife and all of that stuff, and then like he tricks her into signing the papers and stuff like that, he just needs, you know, that little device or whatever to get stamped, and then, you know, the deed is done, his soul is now free to go, Astrid is staying in the afterlife, and come to find out Beetlejuice is the one who stamped it. I really love this part of the movie because they really utilized the one F word that they could use in this PG-13 movie. So anyway, he pulls the lever and he just goes down to hell. So anyway, her soul is saved, but that is the end of Jeremy's storyline. I just felt like it was kind of just not needed, you know what I mean? I felt they would have still ended up in the afterlife somehow. Speaking on Astrid's dad, I felt like he was a great character who works in the afterlife now, which in this universe you die and then you just get a job in the afterlife or whatever. Her dad just so happened to be working at the same place that Jeremy was going so he could get her soul signed over to him, but I feel like his character just wasn't utilized enough because I felt like he was really just there to just tell Astrid, hey, stop fighting with your mom. All right, cool, peace. And that was it. Why add that in there? I feel like it was just, you know, I get it, but I don't get it. It was just a real quick boom and then that's it. And then, oh, Astrid and Lydia are now happy mom and daughter. So that was one of the things I really didn't like about it. I feel like they could have expanded more on the dad if they didn't add in all the other fluff in this movie. And speaking of which, Charles Dietz, I feel like that could have just been a throwaway line, kind of like what they did with the Maitlands, because they really show him so much in this movie where they show his face in pictures. They show him in claymation form, which I thought was amazing. His backstory as to how he died. Apparently he's a bird watcher. He traveled across the ocean to go watch some birds doing it, as Delia put it. His plane crashed. He survived by getting a hold of some of the plane debris, but he got eaten by a shark, so half his body throughout the movie, which they do show him more, well, half of him has this giant shark bite taken out of it, and when he talks, you just see his blood just spewing out of his little vein or whatever. So I thought that was cool, but also, like, with everything going on with that actor, I just found it surprising that they utilized him so much in this movie. But again, he could have just been taken out. Also with Rory, I feel like he could have just not been in this movie. Like I said in my trailer reaction, I felt this guy was very suspicious, and my inklings were correct, because in the end of it all, Beetlejuice gives him a truth serum, and we find out that he's just been mooching off of Lydia and just trying to use her so that way he could get rich and famous and stuff like that. So yeah, in the end of it all, we find out that he's just this shitty guy. But again, it's just another character that I just felt could have been taken out of the movie, and it still would have been the exact same result in the end of it all. Just another one of those subplots that was just thrown into this movie. Like, why? Willem Dafoe as Wolf Jackson, I actually enjoyed. He was really good in playing this role, because his character, he was an actor, and now in the afterlife he is a detective, and in these situations you see him playing this detective, which I thought was funny throughout the movie, because there's one part where he's getting all his troops ready to go to the real world. As he's giving them this huge speech, you just see his assistant in the background with cards that have his lines on them, and he's just reading off of that. Another thing I thought was funny between him and his assistant was that she just consistently kept bringing him coffee for dramatic effect. The last one that he gets, he crushes it and just throws it into the pile of trash, which you see this trash bin, and it's just a pile of coffee cups, which I thought was funny as hell. But again, his character, I feel they could have used him a lot better. If they would have just had Willem Dafoe and Monica Bellucci's character just expanded on just a little bit more, this movie would have been perfect and taken out all that other extra fluff. I feel it would have been a better movie, but not to say that this movie sucked or anything. A lot of subplots, it was just too convoluted or whatever, too bloated, if you will. It is what it is, but I still enjoyed it at the end of the day. So now getting into all my pros that I really enjoyed. The cinematography is so beautiful in this movie. It was shot very well. I love the intro to this movie. It shows you, just like in the first movie, where honing in on the miniature, and then it goes into the real world, which I think they just used the camera effect. I forget what it's called, but I'll put it right here. I just thought that was pretty creative. Using that effect makes everything look like a miniature set of everything. The music score giving the same vibes as the first movie really made me feel good about this movie being made, because it feels like they really had time to sit with this and make it feel just like the first one did. And speaking of which, I love the stop motion that Tim Burton was promising in this movie. Like with the sandworms, they used a lot of that stop motion. I love the use of CGI as well. It wasn't too overwhelming. You could tell when they use CGI, but it also didn't take you out of the movie. I very much enjoyed that. What I also love about this movie, they aren't trying to reinvent the wheel with this one. They're trying to make this movie be its own thing. I really enjoyed that, because it did feel like it was just picking up essentially where the last one left off, just 36 years later, rather than just trying to do what they did in the first one. It was just a bigger movie, but it still felt the same way the first one did, because Tim Burton directing this one, he really knew what he wanted for the sequel. Even though some of it was just unnecessary, I still felt like this movie was really good for what it was. Another thing I loved is the afterlife aspect of showing that world. I love that they still have the characters and how they died. Speaking of which, in this movie, we also have Delia Dietz, who unfortunately does die in this movie. She has these snakes that she's doing this ritual for Charles at his gravesite. These things are supposedly supposed to be defanged, but as she holds them up to her face, they bite her on the neck, passes out and dies, and then she wakes up in the afterlife. I was kind of just like one of those things that I was just like, oh shit, they really just did that. They really just killed off Delia just like that. But with this movie, I felt it wasn't that bad, because we go back and forth from life and afterlife. I just thought it was really ballsy of them to kill off such a big character. And once again, Michael Keaton coming back as Beetlejuice, I really enjoyed him coming back as this character and him not being too over the top with it. It was exactly the same Beetlejuice as we got in the first one, which I thought was really cool, and I really loved that. And they don't show him a lot in this movie. I think his screen time was like 10-15 minutes, something like that. But when he is on screen, he really just steals the show. A lot of things that he did in this movie, like when he's giving the backstory for how he died and how he met his wife, he's speaking to the shrunken head dudes in Italian, which, you know, if you didn't know, Beetlejuice is Italian. And I just thought that was so funny, because it caught me so off guard, because he's going from like his Beetlejuice Beetlejuice accent or whatever, and then boom, serious Italian voice, and then he's just like in the story. He used to be a grave robber, and Dolores finds him and ends up finding a liking to him, and so she proposes marriage to him, and he obviously does it. And then at their wedding, she's pouring them glasses of wine so that way they can celebrate, but she doesn't drink her glass, but Beetlejuice finishes his, throws it in the fire. Come to find out, he has been poisoned, and before he could die, he hacked her up into all these pieces. I just think Michael Keaton killed it once again with Beetlejuice in this movie. Speaking on Lydia, I really enjoy her coming back as this more mature, grown woman, and I love that they utilize her psychic and clairvoyant abilities. She now has this talk show, which I still think they should have called it Strange and Unusual, but I think that would have been a little bit too on the nose for her show. But nonetheless, I think that still would have been a better title than what she had it. Haunted House or something like that. But anyway, I just love that they utilized her, and you do see a bunch of that. She sees all these ghosts throughout the movie, and I found that really awesome. She's also having these flashes of seeing Beetlejuice here and there. Come to find out, he was the one doing that, making her see him, so that way he can put himself on her mind. And then we have Astrid, which I was a little bit too harsh on her with my trailer reactions, but you know, I honestly liked her the last half of this movie. I really enjoyed her. She wasn't playing too much like Wednesday, like everybody seems to be saying. I found it like she was being more of Lydia from the very first Beetlejuice, with, you know, being the whole gothic teenager, being a big know-it-all of sorts. I really enjoyed Astrid in this movie, surprisingly. And Jenna Ortega, once again, I feel like she is just made to play these type of roles because it really suits her, and I really hope to see Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega in more movies, more projects together in the future. But yeah, that was Beetlejuice. I really much enjoyed this movie. Like I said, this was 36 years in the making, and I very much enjoyed it. It wasn't too over the top, it wasn't too much, it was just the right amount. Again, I feel like they just could have, you know, taken out some of the characters, taken out some of the subplots, and in the end the movie would have still been a great movie nonetheless. But for what it is, it was good, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you thought of this movie. Let's start a conversation. And do you agree with my pros and cons list? Let me know. And also, do you think they will make a Beetlejuice movie, being that Beetlejuice was the first one, Beetlejuice being the second one, and then Beetlejuice just making sense to finish off this trilogy? Let me know. I think that would be really cool. Or just call it Beetlejuice X3 or Beetlejuice, but all the E's are 3s. Let me know. And if you do end up using any of those titles, I want to see some royalty checks. And yeah, let me show you the cool popcorn buckets I got. I'm super excited to show you, and we'll save the best for last. So we got this really cool cup. This is the Beetlejuice deal that they were having at Regal, which, by the way, we saw this movie in RPX, which I'm just gonna watch all the movies like that. That was the first time watching a movie like that, and the sounds, oh man, vibrated the seats, so good, man. Especially Beetlejuice being the first movie I saw in RPX, amazing. I absolutely loved it. I'm gonna go do it every time. I love it. Give me 14 of them.
Spectacular. Give me 14 of them right now.
But yeah, that was a cup. They had 4 toppers that you could pick from. My wife picked the sandworm, but it also came with this really cool handbook for the recently deceased. Put your stuff in there.
You can put your weed in there.
I don't think this is a popcorn bucket, but you know, it's really cool nonetheless. And then this beauty right here is the whole reason for going to the Regal Cinema. I actually picked this up a few days before because one of my wife's coworkers gave her a heads up, which I dropped the ball on that. I'm usually on top of when they do popcorn bucket drops, I guess, which again, popcorn buckets becoming popular now, and everybody now has to have a fucking popcorn bucket. It's insanity. But this is the one I was really excited for because obviously I had the real version, which I got from Spirit Halloween. And I also up here, you can't see it, but it's the Beetlejuice, the arrow, the yellow and red sign. I really like this one, which let me know down below. Do y'all actually use these for popcorn, or do you just buy them because they're cool? I don't know. I bought this one because it's cool, and now it just sits in the back of my set and it lights up. Oh yeah. But anyways guys, that's gonna be it. All right, see you in the next one. Later.